Looking for a protein shake that tastes as good as it performs? Meet Rockin' Protein Max. Packed with 50 grams of fuel, it'll help you keep up when your day won't slow down. And because it's always creamy and never chalky, every sip tastes great. Even better, it's lactose-free and has 0 added sugar. It's not every day you find a protein shake you actually want to finish. Catch Rockin' Protein in the dairy cooler at a store near you. Rockin' Protein and Shamrock Farms are registered trademarks of Shamrock Foods Company.
Listen, all you New Yorkers. Taxi! Okay, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
We are back, folks. This is the More Money Show. Hope you're having a wonderful Valentine's Day weekend. And gentlemen out there, if you haven't gotten your wife a card, or if you don't have a dinner plan with her tonight or flowers, I would urge you to go out and do something for your wife. Last year, I forgot about Valentine's Day, and boy, did I pay the price for that. But this week, tonight, I have big plans. I think everything's going to go wonderful, and I'm feeling good about how that will repair our marriage and get us back on a good track. So, my next guest is a good friend, but also a real financial expert, one of the great financial experts in our country, David Bahnsen. You know David, by the way, if you're a regular listener of the More Money Show, because I have him all the time on, because he is backed by popular demand. People really love what he has to say, and he is among many things, he is a major contributor to National Review magazine. He is the author of many books, including my two favorite, There's No Free Lunch and Full Time. David Bahnsen, thanks again for joining.
Always a pleasure, Steve.
So I want to just start with a very basic question. And I've asked you this before, but for people who have not heard you on my show before, I love your book, There's No Free Lunch. And this has become a colloquialism. What exactly does that mean? There's no free lunch?
It means that economics is about trade-offs, that God made the world with scarcity, and so that what we deal with in the field of economics is allocating resources. So when we go to Starbucks, we have $5 in our pocket. We can have a coffee or we can keep our $5, but we can't do both. Starbucks wants our $5. Starbucks wants our $5. We want the coffee. So we do that trade together, and we both got what we wanted out of it. When people talk about economics as this thing where we need to figure out how everybody can get everything, or that something is to be criticized because people don't get everything, they're arguing that there should be a free lunch. And there isn't a free lunch because the economics is about scarcity. And it was an observation that Milton Friedman made, and I used it as the title of my book.
Right. It would be a wonderful thing if there were such thing as a free lunch and we lived in the Garden of Eden. We could just have whatever we want, but you can only have something if you produce it yourself or someone produces it for you, right?
Well, that's right. And by the way, Steve, you meant it as a figure of speech, but I don't believe that there was total abundance in the Garden of Eden either. I think that God made the world with scarcity,
right?
Because he wanted human beings to go creatively, innovatively, productively allocate resources. Now, of course, in the Garden of Eden, it was a little easier. Christians believe that this thing called sin entered the world, and that gets more theological. But my point is, the world was not created with an abundance of Ferraris, and so we have to go allocate resources to make things and make decisions. And it's politicians that act as if you can have everything. But what people don't realize, and this is the fatal flaw of Keynesianism and some of the 20th century economic ideologies that you've devoted your career to, Steve, central planning and statism and socialism, is it misses the point that there's no free lunch, that even if the state provides something, it can only do it by taking it from something else.
That's right. So I don't want to be too philosophical with you. I want to get down to the nuts and bolts of the economy, but let's stay up on this higher plane for a minute. I'm puzzled, David, why it is that after the evidence of the last 100 years, I was privileged to know Milton Friedman towards the end of his life, and we'd have dinner together now and then, and he used to shake his head at me in kind of sorrow and say, that the most important economic lesson of the last 100 years was that socialism failed virtually. Socialism, communism, Maoism, whatever you want to call it, the isms were always a failure, and that free market capitalism was a success. And then he'd say, but Steve, it sounds like half the country thinks that the solution is more socialism. I mean, we see this in New York. We're seeing it in New Jersey. We're seeing it in other countries. Why? Why is it there's the romantic vision that socialism will work, even though everywhere it's been tried, it's failed?
I think that what Milton was missing in a diagnosis is that the people still crying for socialism are not doing it because they believe that they have this empirical or scientific answer whereby socialism all of a sudden works. Where it comes from is a real spiritual malady. And that's where I can, gladly go back to my Garden of Eden analogy a moment ago. This is where people simply want what others have. And it is not about, well, we think socialism has worked or we think free markets do not work. It's more a matter of them imposing a utopian view of society onto others. And I will say this, Steve, a lot of people on our side messed up. A lot of free marketeers messed up because and this didn't matter until the financial crisis, but we refused to make our argument for too much of the 20th century for capitalism divorced from a moral foundation. If we argue for capitalism in some sort of atomistic and dehumanizing way, then people won't buy into it. They won't believe that it creates a higher standard of living for others because they're just going to focus on rich people getting richer. What we have to do is focus on how capitalism is ultimately a moral way of thinking that honors the human person, that gives all of us a chance to create the kind of lives we want to have. And I really believe that that's the burden we have to defeat socialism, is not merely make the dollars and cents look better in our spreadsheet than their spreadsheet. We have to point out it does more for the cause of human flourishing.
Well, not just that. I mean, I agree with you 100%, but also if you look at places where you put more power in the hands of the state or politicians, whether it's Mao or what happened in so many of these countries that moved in an aggressive communist socialist direction, the power was abused. And so look at what happened in Cuba. Look what happened in North Korea. Look what happened, and not just in, communist countries, but even the socialist countries. Look what happened in Venezuela. My goodness, David. I mean, when the socialists came in Venezuela was on its way to becoming one of the richest countries. They had amazing assets. And after 20 years of socialism, they became one of the poorest countries.
Well, that's exactly right. And by the way, we can talk about Venezuela. We can talk about North Korea. You mentioned Pol Pot, Vietnam, or Cambodia. But we could also talk about California. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
There are Western democracies in which socialism and even a softer version that we'll just call central planning, the role of the state. This is where Friedrich Hayek becomes so important, that he points out that even with the best of intentions, a lot of third world dictators don't have good intentions. Even when a Washington, D.C. or a Sacramento, California bureaucrat has good intentions, that doesn't mean they have knowledge. It doesn't mean they have incentives. And so when you combine what George Gilder taught us about incentives and what Friedrich Hayek taught us about knowledge, I believe that free markets represent a vastly superior system to get better outcomes morally. And then those are the conversations guys like you and I need to keep having.
So I'm talking to David Bahnsen. And by the way, David, we're up against a hard break. I would love, can I keep you overtime and maybe for another section? Because I want to talk to you about where we're headed financially. I want to talk to you a little bit about this big article in the New York Times the other day by Oren Cass. Can we hold you?
Yeah, we can do one more section.
All right. We'll be right back, folks. It's the More Money Show on WABC. We are back, folks. This is the More Money Show. Thanks so much for tuning in. We are all over the country. We have affiliates all the way west to Los Angeles and Seattle, and we have affiliates down as far south as Georgia. I think some of the Florida stations get it as well, and of course we go all the way up to Maine. So thank you so much for joining this weekend, this Valentine's Day weekend. Hope you are going to go out with your sweetheart tonight and have a great, great time. So let us continue our conversation with David Bahnsen. If you're just joining us, David Bahnsen is one of the top financial analysts in the country. He knows more about the stock market than just about anybody I know. And David is also the author of many incredible books, including one of my favorites called There's No Such Thing as a Free Lunch. So, David Bahnsen, welcome back. Give me your prognosis. We're over Dow 50,000. You and I have lived through one of the most amazing bull market runs ever. And the question I always get asked, and I'm sure you do too, is can this continue where we're seeing 8 and 9% real rates of return on stocks? I mean, this has been phenomenal. What do you think? Is this, are we coming to the end of the road here, or is just the beginning?
Well, it's a very interesting period because what you've actually already been seeing for a few months now is something we've been talking about for a while that I refer to as a rotation, not so much a correction. There's been a lot of.
Did you say rotation?
A rotation. And what I mean by that.
What does that mean? Yeah.
Yeah, within the market, you're seeing a lot of the leaders that had been driving returns the last few years, your NVIDIAs and Microsofts, they've been down for a few months now, and yet the market's still going higher because we've rotated into different leaders in the market. And so far this year, energy, consumer staples, healthcare, the telecom, these things have all done a lot better, where a lot of the AI and big tech stocks have not done so well.
And why is that?
Well, they were very expensive, and I think they were overheated. And I think that the market is starting to ask really good questions about how exactly some of the AI story is going to play out. And in the meantime, other stuff was really quite attractively valued, and energy is a great example. You've seen some of the midstream energy stocks up 10, 12% so far this year, even while the Mag 7 is down on the year. So it's been a big rotation.
So as we move to the robotics, artificial intelligence age, and the digital age continues to plow forward, as you know, David, our energy demands will continue to escalate. And so, by the way, as an aside, I think one of the most phenomenal things Donald Trump has done is to repeal this outrageous, what was called the endangerment finding, which basically was going to try to phase out all of our fossil fuels in this country. Even though we get 80% of our energy from fossil fuels, this would have sent the American economy into one of the greatest depressions ever. But as we move forward, we're going to need more energy, not less, a lot more. I've seen estimates that over the next 20 years, our energy demands will as much as triple. So I'm not too surprised that the energy companies are doing well.
And a lot of it is not even just on the demand side, which continues to go higher. We are always going to have more demand for energy. But I am sometimes, critical of certain policies that I don't necessarily agree with President Trump. But energy is the one I always come back to, and my friends on the right or even friends on the left, as the greatest thing I've seen in both the first term and now in the second term, because the arguing for American energy independence is a must. And President Trump has done that with deregulation, and he's done it with environmental logic that doesn't seek to shut down our ability to be an exporter of natural gas and other resources we have. So he's pro-growth in his perspective on energy. And I think it's very, very important we realize that the Malthusian view of this would extinct civilization.
Yeah, we're not running out of this stuff. And by the way, you're exactly right. We're producing more oil and gas today in America than any other time in history. When 30 years ago, everyone said we were running out of energy. So you're quite right about that. One of the reasons I asked David Bahnsen to come on the show when I talked to him earlier this week was because there was a big story, David. I think you saw it in the Sunday New York Times of last week by a fellow named Orrin Cass. And I don't quite know how you would characterize him, but he has a bit of a following among conservatives. And he was arguing, Orrin, that we don't really need people like David Bahnsen, these financiers, the people who look at the stock market. They're just kind of, parasites on the economy. And and that, the rich are just getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. He almost sounded a little bit like Bernie Sanders in his rhetoric, but a lot of conservatives and Republicans are apparently listening to this guy. Is he right?
No, and I would say everything I've said about this argument and what Orrin Cass stands for, even if he weren't going after the financial sector that I happen to work in, it doesn't bother me at all. I'm doing just fine, thank you very much. But what bothers me is that it would really hurt the standard of living of our fellow American people. And what Orrin doesn't understand, even if he has good intentions, is that if you don't have strong financial markets, you can't have a strong economy. And Europe has had weak capital markets for decades, and they've been non-competitive. They have not been able to keep up with American innovation forever. And the fact of the matter is that what we have done is keep unemployment low. Inflation, other than for about a year-long period after COVID, has been relatively low. But most importantly, we've grown the real wages of our workers, and we've done this while having absolutely robust financial markets that innovate, provide new ways to bring capital to their best use. The irony of Orrin's article, which really bothered me, was that everything he's proposing is more government solution.
I know.
And everything he's criticizing came from government intervention.
That's exactly right. And by the way, you made some very important points there. I think one of the most important and one I want to hone in on is that, people don't understand, well, what has Warren Buffett done for the economy? I mean, he doesn't produce anything. Well, what our capital markets do, David, and I've learned this from reading your stuff and other people's writings, is that we are really good at allocating capital to its highest value added source. And so one of the reasons socialism and communism doesn't work is because government is really bad at allocating capital. And the Warren Buffetts of the world, who are really smart, and people like you who say, hey, put your money in company A, not company B, because company A is going to produce things that people want. I think a lot of people don't understand that function. Certainly Orrin Cass doesn't seem to understand it.
No, and then he'll go after private markets like private equity and private credit, and not realize that what the financial crisis, you had an awful lot of risk in the banking sector, which is very systemic. And what private credit has said is, okay, we're going to do riskier loans still, but the risk will be held by a risk taker, by an investor, not by the whole banking system. So why would someone like Orrin be against that? It's what everybody should want, is for risk takers to take risk and the banking system to have less risk. So his argument fails on its own merits. But ultimately, Steve, we can't. Let me just finish real quick. We can't talk about this without pointing out what's really behind it, which is class warfare. Class warfare. That's really
I call it the greed and envy lobby, which is ironic because they think we're the ones who are, have greed and envy. And yet they are the ones who, instead of, lighting a match, they just want to curse the darkness and curse the people who are sitting in the light. And so I agree with you entirely. There's a kind of hypocrisy of this. But it is a movement, and it is, I'm very worried that the conservative movement, David, is going to be split apart between some of these kind of people think, oh, we need more government intervention in the economy. And incidentally, they did intervene in the economy under Biden. We put $400 billion into green energy. It didn't produce any energy.
No, that's right. And you know what, Steve, it's where people like you and I have to stay consistent. It's a nonpartisan thing. You know, I'm very critical of the stake we took in Intel. Yeah. I'm very critical of talking about not letting Lockheed Martin pay dividends to investors. These are things that we need to avoid. And I understand the intention. Politicians always want to do something. But like when you look at the housing crisis, when you look at things of the environment, when you look at promoting economic growth, the private sector has the resources to do this. And when you leave capital alone, capital will find its best and most efficient use.
Yeah, especially when we have smart people like you and Warren Buffett and others who are advising people about where to put their money. Well, David Bahnsen, you are a national asset. Thank you so much for joining this afternoon, folks. This is the More Money Show. I'm taking your calls as we come back. 1-800-848-9222. I want to hear from you. Do you think that the free enterprise system, we need to move past it? I don't. I love the free enterprise system. 1-800-848-9222, and we'll be right back.
LifeLock, how can I help?
The IRS said I filed my return,
but I haven't.
1 in 4 tax-paying Americans has paid the price of identity fraud.
What do I do?
My refund, though.
I'm freaking out.
Don't worry, I can fix this.
LifeLock fixes identity theft guaranteed and gets your money back with up to $3 million in coverage.
I'm so relieved.
No problem. I'll be with you every step of the way.
1 in 4 was a fraud-paying American. Not anymore. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.